Hey, this is John Black, the Hobby Hermit, and welcome to the Hermitage. We call them battle mats. Really, they're play mats. Like, you know, kids, cars. Not a bad thing. But I looked into those and I bought one. Now this was like 125 bucks for this. It's two-sided. And there we go. That gives me a 4x6 area. The only thing I have to store are mats and scatter terrain, buildings, etc. However, I really don't want to pay 125 bucks, and there's only so many battle mats out there. So we're going to make our own, and we're going to see if we can make a two-sided battle mat.
In the videos I'd watched leading up to this, people had used plastic backdrop cloths to stop any of the caulk seeping through. So I laid the table out with plastic and then put the drop cloth on. My biggest problem and my first mistake was that I could not get that drop cloth to lay straight. So it had folds, wrinkles and such. I tried getting it as tight as I could, but it was not tight enough on my first attempt. Which you will see when I try to smear the first side down. Well, let's look at the mixing.
Alrighty chaps, here we go. This is going to be the fun part. I'm going to screw up, but hey. So, I got a pan I'm going to mix. Now, I'm not going to mix it all at once. I'm going to do probably 2 of these 2s at a time. Spread, mix, spread, mix, spread. So, this says 30 minutes, but it's going to be thinned down, so that should give us time. It's this stuff, and some water. So I'm also going to be adding some isopropyl, because apparently that helps it run into and soak into stuff. Oh, look at that! Toothpaste! Lovely stuff. Right, I'm going to try and stay out of the way of the camera, but no promises. Let's get a big old gloop on and see how it spreads. Alrighty, so I got coverage with 4 tubes. So there's my first layer covered. It doesn't look as nice as on the previous videos. I wonder why that is. but you know, if it rolls up and is flexible like it's supposed to be, that is a good substrate for terraining up, and I don't know if the light's going to show it, but there's like 2 folds that go up the middle here. Now if they stay and won't go away or whatever, or they're really annoying, I mean honestly, that's a road, and I'm happy with that. So that's the substrate, and we'll see what happens when it dries. It might just crack into bits and not come up from the plastic bit beneath it, and all kinds of horrible things may happen, and probably will. This is actually kind of fun, especially because you don't know what the end result's going to be, and you know, you put your effort in and try and do as best you can, and hopefully happy things will happen. So let's get back to it after it's dry.
So once it was dried, I hit it with some rattle can paints, just to see if I could get different textures, if I could hide the creases with paint, and also make sure the paint stuck. Good news is that it behaved the way a mat should. It didn't stick to the bottom side, and it was fully flexible. The bad news, however, is those folds and wrinkles were extremely prominent. Something we have to cure in the future. Not to be daunted though, I used the folds and the wrinkles to try and integrate into my first quick paint job. All the folds I try to use as edges of the road and cracks and wrinkles. The waves were a little iffy, I had to think about those, but then I decided to do a blowing Martian light sand that, you know, there were places where they were in the what I designated as the road, so I made the drifts go across the road as well. I used a Sharpie to add more cracks to take the eye off of too much of the straight lines. So all in all, I'm kind of happy with it. It's not brilliant, and I don't have much terrain to put on there to show it off as well as I think it will. But it's a backdrop for terrain, and with enough terrain pieces on here, or the usual amount of terrain pieces, I think it'll work well, but we have problems to solve. And of course, folds on one side equals folds on the other. So when I was thinking about the backside, look, you can see these lines that were the road. I don't want to be forced into doing another road, so I decided to mix up thicker and try and obscure those lines.
Look at that. Well, it's covered. We got it covered. Covered in 5. What I'm doing now is texturing. I'm letting it go a little harder because I can still see these stupid lines. So I'm building up around them, and then because it's kind of grabby, I'm tapping and dragging to try and, you know, break that up so it isn't prominent, and then give the whole surface a kind of, you know, well, it's kind of like a slate look, I guess, if I had to describe it, but an uneven surface. So it will be hard. It'll be easier for us to hide any lines that are showing through. So that's kind of the texture. It's not massive, but it's enough to break up, hopefully, any lines that form.
So now it's time to paint the other side, and I used some acrylic basic black, and then really diluted it down with some water to make a wash. Because the mat's got texture, it's not totally smooth. The other worry is because although it's paintable, it's got silicone in it, so I was kind of worried about thinning the paint too much, you know, and it did bead a little. So, but it worked out pretty good. So you start off with a little test area, and then got bigger, and as I expanded, I could see brush strokes. So what I did was I went and grabbed a roller, and then it was kind of fun because I was adding the wash and then rollering it, and you can, between the pressure you put on the roller, the amount of wash you put down, and you have time to work with it, so you could kind of by feel go over it and get, you know, the kind of texture you wanted, and it worked out pretty good for me. The other thing I did was let it dry a little, come back, go over it again, let it dry, come back, and in that way you can get like patchy areas and also milled areas where you put less paint on to other paint, and slowly build it up so you get a base that you can work on, that it also helps hide any of the lines, etc, etc. So again, this worked very well for me, just painting by feel, basically, with a wash and going over it, coming back, going over it, coming back. For the next layer of color, I used a rattle can of deep green. I like to use the camouflage from Rust-Oleum for this kind of stuff. And then just, by feel again, started going over it and hitting it. I found that if you hit it lower down and sideways, it will hit a lot of the texture and bring that out more. If you do it from straight above, a lot of the overspray settles down into the crevices. So after that, I went with a lighter like a yellow, and then just started going over it again, giving it some more difference, making it more interesting, and just kept going like that. Finally, I came back with my airbrush with a portable compressor underneath it and started hitting with some green. The airbrush does a more defined area than the rattle cans, so adds more detail. Now, this is not the finished effect, this is just me seeing what I can do. So yep, again, that worked pretty well for me. So once that was dry, it was time to get the straight edge and cut off all the excess and the raggedy bits and make it look like a proper map made by a proper person in a proper way. So there we have it, a two-sided battle mat. Mistakes were made, lessons were learned, but overall I'm pretty happy with it. The first side is a bit ropey, but with terrain on it, I'm sure that'll be, it'll work out. It's pliable. It's got some nice heft to it. It's not very heavy, but it's heavy enough, and it lays nice and flat. It rolls up. It's easy to store. I mean, what else do you want from a battle mat, to be honest with you? I will come back and paint more detail onto these. Again, this was just a test piece to see if it's viable, if it's doable, and what the end result is physically. So if I come back, I'm going to put more details into the paint, make the actual paint good on the mat, and it works. I'm going to call this a success. We got there in the end. Thanks for watching this. If you got it this far, please don't forget, like and subscribe. I don't want to be a YouTube star, but the likes and subscriptions kind of keep me going, make it worth faffing around with these cameras and doing the editing and everything else. So again, thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next one.